Have you ever watched yourself make a mistake? In real time. You could see it happening. You could name what you were doing. You could even explain in that exact moment why it wasn't a good idea. And you did it anyway. Maybe it was pulling away from someone who was getting too close. Maybe it was reaching for your phone instead of sitting with a feeling. Maybe it was sabotaging something good right before it got great. You knew. You always know. That's what makes it so strange. Because we've been told that self-awareness is the answer. Know yourself. Understand your patterns. Name your triggers. Do the work. And once you see yourself clearly, you'll change. But what if that's not quite how it works? What if self-awareness, real, deep, hard-won self-awareness, doesn't fix you? What if it just gives you a front row seat to watch yourself not change? In high definition. Here's something most people don't know about their own brain. There are two separate systems running at all times, and they don't always talk to each other. The first system is the one that actually runs your behavior, your habits, your instincts, your emotional reactions, the part that fires before you even realize it's firing.
Hey, what do you think about this?
The second system is the one watching, the narrator, the observer, the part that sees what's happening and writes careful notes about it. Self-awareness lives almost entirely in System 2, which means the part of you that understands your patterns is not the part that runs them. They are completely different departments, with completely different authority. Think about it like this. Imagine a sports commentator, sitting high in the booth, watching the game unfold in perfect detail. They can see the mistakes before they happen. They can name every error as it's being made. They can explain, with remarkable clarity, exactly what went wrong. But they cannot stop the play. They have no authority on the field. Your prefrontal cortex, the rational, reflective, self-aware part of your brain, can observe your emotional system having a complete meltdown. It just cannot always stop it. You can say, out loud, in the middle of the moment, I know exactly what I'm doing, and still do it. Because commentary is not control. Awareness is not authority. And the cruelest thing about a highly self-aware mind is that it doesn't protect you from your patterns. It just makes them louder. Here's a number that will stay with you. 95%. That's the percentage of people who believe they are self-aware. The actual number? 10 to 15%. That research comes from organizational psychologist Tasha Eurich. And most people stop at that statistic. But there's a second finding in her work that almost nobody talks about. For a specific group of people, the ones who are genuinely, deeply self-aware. More self-awareness didn't always lead to better outcomes. In some cases, it made things worse. Why? Because there's a version of self-awareness that becomes its own trap. Psychologists call it rumination, not reflection. The difference is subtle, but important. Reflection asks, what happened and what can I do differently? Rumination asks, why am I like this? Reflection moves. Rumination circles. And study after study shows that people who ruminate, who go deep, detailed, circular loops inside their own psychology, show higher rates of anxiety and depression, and paradoxically, lower rates of actual change. Because your brain is remarkably efficient, and it treats analysis as a substitute for action, the insight feels like progress. The understanding feels like movement. Your nervous system exhales. Even though nothing actually changed, You named the pattern. You explained the pattern. You may have even written the pattern in a journal, and then the pattern ran anyway, because knowing is not doing, and the brain doesn't update itself through insight. So what do you do with this? If awareness isn't enough, what is? The answer, frustratingly, is smaller than you think. Behavioral science has a concept called behavioral activation. The idea is almost embarrassingly simple. Action comes before the feeling of readiness, not after. You don't wait until you feel ready. You act. And then something shifts. Your brain doesn't update its self-concept through understanding. It updates through evidence. Every time you act differently than your pattern predicts, even slightly, even imperfectly, even while the commentary is still running in the background, you give your nervous system new data, and new data, repeated over time, quietly rewrites the pattern. There's a quote that maps perfectly onto this. The menu is not the meal. Self-awareness is the menu. It describes everything beautifully. It names every ingredient. It might even make you feel hungry. But you still have to eat. You are not broken because you can see your patterns and still repeat them. You are human, operating with a brain that was never designed for perfect self-correction. Self-awareness was never meant to be the finish line. It was always meant to be the beginning, a map. The most accurate, most honest, most detailed map of a terrain you have never fully walked. The question was never, do you know yourself? The real question is, what are you willing to do with what you know? If this landed differently than you expected, that's the point. Behind the trait is where we go past the surface of who you think you are. Subscribe if you want to keep going deeper. And leave a comment with the pattern you've named, but haven't broken yet. Because you are not alone in that room.